Shabbat Shalom. Welcome back to Take Time for Torah. I'm so glad that you've joined us. We begin this week with Parshat Shmot, the beginning of the book of Exodus. And of course, this is the beginning of the transformation. As we closed out Genesis last week, we saw that the sons of Jacob had all made their home in Egypt, and they lived in luxury because of Joseph. Joseph passes away, Jacob passes away, and the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Jacob, continue to enjoy their freedom in the land of Goshen. But that king, that Pharaoh dies, and a new Pharaoh rises up, and he did not know Joseph. And he sees this now incredibly large group of people as a threat to his authority and his power. So he enslaves them. He begins to restrict their liberties. He takes away their freedom. And he even takes it so far as to continue to restrict their liberties, but to enslave them through terrible means, like the deaths of every newborn male Jewish child. And it is because of that Yocheved takes her newborn son and places him in a reed basket and floats him down the Nile River, where he will be found by the princess of Pharaoh, and where Moshe will be raised in a lap of luxury, who will apprentice to the power of Pharaoh, who will learn inside and out what it means to be the leader of a nation and to be in authority. These are two very distinct stories: the enslavement of the Bnei Yisrael and Moshe's being raised in Pharaoh's household. For the Israelites, they lose their freedom and their liberties bit by bit. And in a sense, they lose also their self-confidence, their will to live, until at the end they just submit to the will of the master, and that is Pharaoh, and do his bidding, building his cities, without hope for the future. And perhaps that's key. Bnei Israel had no hope for the future, so they couldn't even begin to plot an overthrow of the Egyptian government. And so they didn't. And it wasn't until they cried out to God that God took notice of them. And at the same time, Moshe is being raised in the lap of luxury, apprenticing to leadership and to power, who is completely detached from Bnei Israel and from the misery of slavery. So why are these two stories woven together in the opening chapters of the book of Exodus? Because the Torah wants to teach us that when we have lost all hope, we will not free ourselves from the circumstances in which we find ourselves. But Moshe, who was raised in Pharaoh's household, could detach himself and he could become a leader if only they would listen. And that's exactly what happens. Moshe, who was raised in Pharaoh's household, was able to hope and to see a future. And that's the message he brings to Bnei Yisrael. Moshe certainly has his work cut out for him. He has to get Pharaoh to listen to him, and he has to get Bnei Yisrael to listen to him before the exodus from Egypt can happen. But once he does that, they are on their way. Now, why is Moshe chosen as the leader of Bnei Yisrael? Well, I think there's three reasons. One, he could speak to Pharaoh in Pharaoh's own language and could force Pharaoh to negotiate and to release them. He could speak to Bnei Israel because he was one of them. Although not raised with them, he could help them to understand God's power and their worth in this world. And finally, and I think this is the best, is that Moshe had a set of values and principles which gave him hope for the future, which could give Bnei Israel hope for the future. And he could say not only to Israel and not only to Pharaoh, but he could also say to God at later points, this is the way we must live if we are going to have hope for the future. We are now in the midst of a presidential election series. Who will be the Republican candidate? Who knows? Who will be the Democratic candidate? That's pretty clear. But we have to say to these potential leaders of the United States, you must have a strong set of values, and you must give us hope for the future, and you must also work to make that hope possible. You have to give us a better way of life so that we can become more than we are today and more than we will be tomorrow. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.